Hey, this is Kyle Cooper coming to you with another race breakdown, the last race before the pandemic. And this was the circuit race of the 35 plus Masters race, category 3/4 from 2020. On day one, I had come in third place, and if you wanted to watch that, you could see Chaz Turman's breakdown, tips for racing solo on YouTube. Check out his channel. So I got a call up in this particular race, and people who were first and second were Timothy Schellinger from Courier and Anthony Freeman from Big Orange were my marked riders, and I was keeping an eye on those teams. And my goal was basically stay near the front, don't let any breaks with those two riders get away, and try to conserve as much energy as possible up until that point. So the circuit race here is a lot of fun, and the road in the first section is fairly bumpy, and I've ridden it now, over a year afterwards, and they haven't really fixed any of this. But it rides pretty fast. A couple of curves here, no climbs to speak of in this section. And the first challenge here is this abrupt left turn. You have to really apex this turn well and slow down, and often have to tap your brakes or you'll end up in that dirt over to the right side. It almost always gets single file through there. So here I'm just trying to stay in the draft, not get too far back. As you can see, I had to work my way up a little bit there. A couple people swarmed around me right at the beginning, but I'm going to try and patrol here near the front. Keep an eye out for anything threatening going. Right here begins the center line section of center line violations are enforceable after this turn, the turn we just made. So I actually said something like center line as a reminder to the guy ahead. But in general, the refs are not gonna yell at you for barely going over the line as you're going around a turn. But even so, like in this race, we were given a very stern warning by the motorcycle official beforehand. Said, I don't care if you're getting pushed out there, I don't care what reason, if I see you over the yellow line, you are disqualified. Not relegated, disqualified. So, I don't want to see somebody disqualified on the very first lap or something like that, so I was just trying to give them a gentle reminder. Now on this course, there's almost always a headwind in this section, slightly from the left as well, so that before we turn down to this section, there's a little bit of headwind as well, and then this is the worst of the windy sections here. And in addition, after a short section of downhill, it becomes a slow drag up to the next turn, a right-hand turn. And my goal here was stay protected from the wind if possible, not let anything threatening go. Keep an eye on my marked riders. Not do any extra work if I don't have to. The road conditions, you can see, are variable throughout the entire race. There's asphalt, there's fresh tarmac, painted sections, non-painted sections, potholes, roots through the road. It made for some interesting racing. In this particular race, I had not pre-ridden. I had ridden it a year before, but I had not pre-ridden it. This year, I didn't make that mistake. I went down a couple weeks ago and checked it out ahead of time, as I'm racing this circuit again here in a few days. I'm recording this on June 2nd, 2021. The Tour de Murrieta has been moved back a little bit later than usual. It's going to be a hot one, which may affect the race as well. You can see the rider setting up, kind of going far to the left, so he could take that turn as quickly as possible. I didn't really find that was necessary because it was at the end of a hill, so our speeds were not super high onto that turn. But here begins a downhill. It always got ripping fast through here. People were, you know, tired from coming up the hill, but you know, there's a nice burst of free speed there if you're willing to pedal, and then rollers for the entire rest of this, which is the longest or back straight. Again, remember there's a center line rule enforced through here, so wind is coming from the left, and slight tailwind, but mostly from the left here. So trying to stay protected if possible, and keep it fast. Use that tailwind, and not going to let this roll away too far. And the thing that most people remember from this particular circuit is the hill that's about to come up. In the pro race, the feed zone's right at / before it. And it's steep, but it's very short. It's the kind of climb. If there's going to be a climb in a ride, I'd prefer it to be one like in this. I prefer it to be a hill like this. You know, short burst. Pretty much universally ends up being 500, 600, 700 watts each lap, and then pedal over the top to make sure they maintain contact. It's helpful to be in the front here because it does sometimes bunch up into several people wide. Predictable counter there on the right hand side right as it bunched up. And you know, watching this now, I'm feeling very boxed in here by people that don't seem to want to do much to chase it down. You know, we're allowed to go across the center line there. Technically it's still a center line section. They said we were allowed to set up there. And then I believe on this road is where they stopped enforcing center lines. Obviously there is no line in this particular road anyway. Now remember, there's a headwind coming straight at you, or slightly from the right here in this section, and this actually was the section that I found the most demoralizing each lap, because you know, you're coming off the longest stretch of the course, and that tailwind, you know, a couple of rollers, a lot of speed, and then make a couple of turns and then come right back into this headwind. And luckily it's a short section. You make a left-hand turn, you get protected by some buildings and trees. I don't know why, but this particular section of road used to bother me the most. I didn't want to let myself fall further than about 10th wheel. And so, you know, using my momentum to roll straight ahead, minimal power here. You know, if it's going to slow down there, and I've got the momentum, might as well use it to take a nice practice line through this corner. And you see, it's a fairly short distance to this barrier, so counting the amount of time that it's going to take to get to the barrier, planning a potential sprint for later. And 8 laps remaining. So for this race, you know, I'm not including the entire race, but part of the reason for that is that the battery life of a GoPro is not quite long enough for an hour and 40-minute race. So what I was planning to do was record for about 20 to 30 minutes. If nothing crazy happened, turn it off, and then try and turn it back on near the, a little closer to the end. Usually get about an hour out of these. The rear camera gets longer. I have a session back there, but for the Hero 7, which I have here, usually only about an hour. Depends on the resolution. So you see a couple of attacks went here. First there was one from Monster. Brought him back, and as soon as we brought him back, I know a nice counter move going up the road here. This section of the road is closed, so you're allowed to go over the center line if you want, although most of us stayed pretty far to the right. And as I'm getting swarmed a little bit here, you can see I'm getting a bit antsy. I want to move forward a little bit. I'm worried about making this left-hand turn too far back. It's going to bunch up. And you'll see why. Yeah, I'm getting pushed out to the outside here, all the way over into the dirt. Some choice language for that particular gentleman. Pardon my French. I was pretty frustrated because he basically had plenty of room. There was nobody to his left, and he just swung really far to this outside, and I had nowhere to go but into the dirt. Luckily, I was able to pedal out of it. I think that's the only time on the video that I have that, but that actually happened one other time where somebody cooked it and I was a little on the outside. It's not like I was cutting outside, but I was already on the outside and just get forced outside. So you have to, it's a pretty sharp turn, and it's narrow lanes, and if you don't apex it, that's where you're going to end up. So back into the center line enforceable area. Trying to hide from the wind a little bit here, although in retrospect I probably should be on the left, not the right, since the very minimum we should be echeloning across the echeloning across the road, with them being all the way over to the left hand side. Everybody's fighting for the draft, so even if you're all the way over to the line, you're not getting as much draft. But here I am where I should be, slightly to the right of this guy's wheel, trying to fight for as much draft as I can get. Now, the previous year, 2019, I did this race as a Cat 4, and I got dropped. It was a humbling experience. I think I made it to, I think I had 2 laps remaining. I think it was only a 7 lap instead of a 9 lap like this one is, but I got dropped on the on this stretch, and then I clawed my way back on by the right-hand turn, but then we went down that area where I said you get free speed, and then as we did the next climb, I just became detached, and I was wary of this section as a result. I wasn't going to let that happen. You can see I move, getting a decent gap here, and I couldn't tell from the camera, but I saw that it looked like there was a big orange rider in there, and so I wasn't going to let that get away. I'm not sure if it was Anthony or not, but no, I didn't mention this, but I'm solo in here as I get up to them, trying to mush these guys into actually doing some work. They've already got a huge gap. Why not use it? So I go to the front, pull through, and try to encourage some work here. I just worked hard to get up to a breakaway that's already kind of resigned itself to the fact that they're going to get caught. So I go to the front and take a pull, flick him through, and there's a gentleman here skipping a pole, or trying to skip a pole. I refuse to let him, make him bridge, close the gap, and hop on his wheel. You can see there's a 4th rider there. I'm not sure if he's just gassed or what, but 4-man breakaway, you could potentially make this work. And This is Peter Durante's in front of us, doing a very hard pull and making it challenging for me to latch on, especially after I just pulled. So asking him to kind of, let's keep it smooth. Telling him not to pull through quite as hard. As they always say, smooth is slow and slow is fast. Something like that. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I always get that backwards. So we got a decent rotation here, taking short pulls, giving feedback on everybody's pulls. But you can see we've got at least one other rider here. And it looks like the majority of the group is bridged up to us. And one guy wasn't going to come across. We only had a few people that actually bridged here, so now we've got a decent breakaway size here. And if we were able to do this in a non-dysfunctional way, there's no reason we should get caught. But the level of cooperation amongst the riders was a little variable. So I pulled through. Chris Davey was a friend of mine who just pulled right before me. We had good communication. We tended in the past to work together. You can see people are looking back, and it looks like we must be caught. So, even though we're caught, I don't see any reason to slow way down and have a counterattack just blow by. So I asked him to kind of just keep some power going. I don't think this gentleman was very happy that I wasn't pulling through, though. And you can see one of my marked riders is Anthony Freeman, who's on my wheel right now. You can just hear that wind howling as soon as you turn right onto this section of road. So it wasn't a section to have a gap in front of you, if possible. Really trying to hold the wheel. That gentleman there took the world's shortest pull. I think I was a little frustrated, so I pulled through a little harder, make him close the gap down. Slot my way back into the top 10. And there I shall sit. We had a few more of those type of 1 to 2 rolling off the front, bring them back. I don't think I covered any more moves myself like that earlier bridge attempt. I just tried to mush people. I'd been doing a decent amount of work at this point, and I was going to try and wait until it looked like a move with very strong riders was in it. And I was watching that guy from Villa Club Lagrange, the guy with the yellow socks, so Peter Durante's, who was pulling like a freight train earlier during that breakaway attempt, as somebody who I wanted to keep an eye on. after that previous pull. In this section of road, there was basically no line without bumps. So, and the one thing I didn't want to do is end up in the dirt here. But again, I respected the wind in the sections where the wind was really in your face, like coming up. But I think I should have done a little bit better job of being on the left side of the road here, because the wind is, coming from the left, all the way over to the line, or even further.
A few moments later.
So, I turned off my camera, trying to save the battery, and here it is coming back on. I'm skipping forward about, I don't know, 45 minutes. And, at this point we have about a little over half an hour, about 40 minutes to go. We're all still together. But I did notice that a couple people were looking a little twitchy. And I was wondering whether or not a breakaway might try to go on this lap. Not sure why we were braking in that corner. It was kind of unnecessary. So right in front of me here is Tim, who won the crit the day before, his first place in the Omnium. So I'm keeping an eye on him. Trying to hide here in the pack. I'm mentioning to a buddy of mine, I'm not sure who it was that I was actually talking to, that I think I've done a little too much work at the front, so I'm trying to recover here. In the headwind section, of course. Make everybody else pull. You can hear me coughing and hacking a little bit. And I'm slightly out of position to cover this effort that I see coming from Big Orange. Take an opportunity here. Even though I'm taking some wind here, it's the first point where I saw where I could actually roll a little further forward and not feel quite as boxed in. And everybody's going about the same speed here up this hill. So, the draft becomes a little less important at speeds of 14 miles an hour. So, but if something goes, I'm going to try and slot right back in. As soon as we crest that hill, the wind picks right back up. And Anthony puts in a decent dig here, and I try to, he got a fairly arrow position. I'm just trying to kind of stay with him, make sure he's doing a little bit more work than I am whenever it's windy. And then because I tend to roll faster downhill, I'm going to do so. Take the front, take good lines, make people close down to me, and recover. I don't have to go too hard here before the next roller. I think he thought that we were getting a little bit of a breakaway started there, but the field was basically on us right away, and so I told them that they were on us, and I kind of killed it so we could get some recovery here if possible. And I'm just going to keep wheel surfing, jumping from attack to attack, not letting anybody get away. But looking for who wants to do work versus who is just kind of rolling off the front. You know, this is that hill on the backside. Climbers love this hill. It's not really long enough for the skinny minis to get any benefit for it, you know. It really only took less than 10 seconds of hard effort there to stay connected. But if you're already on the limit because it was really going fast in the backstretch, then, you know, that could be a kick in the teeth. You know, one of the important things I found was continuing to pedal over the top, keep the pressure on. And a blazing attack here on the right hand side. That was a nice move, which I wasn't expecting. But again, a solo move from a team that I haven't really seen doing anything I'm not super concerned about. Probably should let some of these other teams chase it down. But if they're going to do that hard of an effort to do so, I'm going to make sure I'm on their wheel, get a free ride. Fortunately, this guy has sat up, and I'm in a hard position now. Got a guy who doesn't want to pedal, trying to force me to go around him. And I'm going to refuse to do so, and I'm going to sit on his wheel in the headwind section, and I'm going to wait for somebody to come around. Just making sure to keep this gentleman up the road on a short leash. You can see as somebody comes around, hop on their wheel. If he wants to go, I'll go with him. That guy looked like he wanted to work. He goes, I immediately pull through. Probably should have given him at least a couple of seconds to pull rather than jumping through that quickly. You know. Last year when this race happened, my fitness was at an all-time high, but my racecraft was not. You know, my former coach, the coach at the time, Chaz, he's doing a great job of coaching me on tactics after the fact, but I still had a lot to learn, and I still do, of course, now. You know, it's just, my mantra in this race was keep an eye on the important players, try and win the Omnium if possible. Don't let anybody who could beat me in the Omnium get away. But otherwise, stay out of the wind if possible. Breakaways are not uncommon at the Tour de Murrieta circuit race. You can see this guy from Monster going for an effort. Now, I don't know if I was a little gassed there or not. I probably should have since I was on his wheel. Went with him. But you know, I kind of let that open up and figured somebody else would fill in. A little bit better job here, staying slightly to the left of the rider in front, trying to get a little bit more of that protection from the cross headwind here, coming from the right hand side. Somebody sounded like they almost dropped a chain there. Give them a little heckle. I'm much more vocal in this race than normal, which means I must have been feeling pretty good, because usually I'm not talking quite as much. And I saw this gap kind of that I should be able to roll across and also give me the best possibility of taking this line without ending up in the dirt. So I didn't want to have to take that turn multiple people wide ever again. You can see that same rider still up the road, but you got two guys here, one that looks like he wants to work and one that I'm waiting to see if he'll pull through at all or not. I think this is probably slowing down a little sooner than we needed to here, but you know, I'm turning here immediately back into the wind and staying over to the left if at all possible to protect myself. I'm about to bring this rider back. Get some lap traffic here. I think the safest thing here is to just go by and not try and pass them 2 or 3 wide unless we had to. And then go ahead and bring this rider back. And zip it up. Now, since I had to do the majority of this effort to bring him back, I'm thinking the best thing for me to do would probably be to recover. But a year ago me says, nah, I'm gonna roll ahead and be in the wind for no reason at 530 watts. Why not? But luckily that did give me the speed to already be up fast enough to hop onto this breakaway attempt here. See, I'm really having to, you know, neither of these guys is really pulling full gas. I think it's because everybody's strung up, but we're all still more or less together. But remember, this is the gentleman that I mentioned earlier. Look at those quads and calves, man. There's no doubt that this person can pedal a bike. And so, as I said, I've been keeping an eye on him, and he was in that effort there. He looks back and he decides to light it up. And I'm like, thank God I am on your wheel. You can see me in the draft here going uphill, 600 watts. And, you know, this is the fastest that we had taken that hill yet. And everybody was chasing us down. But I'm on high alert here because we got a little bit of a gap from the main pack. And I'm wondering whether or not the elastic might be about to snap here. Everybody looks a little tired to me. And people were taking just a little bit longer to respond to these moves each time. You can see, you know, we go on the right-hand side here. Or make the right-hand turn, I'm sorry. And you know, we see this move go here on the left from Peter again. And I'm running into bushes here on the right-hand side. I'm worried because I know he's a heavier rider and he knows how to motor. So as soon as I get a gap, I zoom past and bridge up to him immediately. I was hoping that we'd bring one more person with us, but you know, I knew this guy was strong and I really wanted to work with him at this point. So I come up to him and I go on right past him, tell him, come on, let's make this happen. So he jumps on my wheel. We finish this little punchy roller here, and I'm waiting for him. I'm looking back, he for a second was not pedaling super hard. But we look back, we see that we got a gap, and he decides to put in an effort here, and I jump on his wheel, and man, he's very strong. Having to do decent power to jump back on his wheel. He pulled through a little bit harder than I liked each time because he's just so much stronger. Peter's known as he's a time trialist. Didn't know him before this race, but I know him now, and try to keep these pulls measured, but as equal as possible here. And if anything, I probably should be pulling a little bit harder to commit ourselves to establishing a little bit better of a gap. Doing more power in his draft than I am on the front's probably not equally sharing the load at this point. But it was a big effort to follow him down that hill, and so I didn't know what kind of a climber he was at this point, and so you can hear me gasp. It's a little bit harder up that hill than I wanted. So I tell him, give me 5 seconds. I actually counted it out. It took about 8 seconds instead of 5, and then I roll through and I let him know I'm coming. I don't want him to think that I'm already playing games. I wasn't. I was gassed. But if we're gonna make this work, we got to communicate, and that's one thing I felt like we did. We did a good job. More me being the loudmouth that I am, but I felt like we were talking in this effort, and and I look back and I see a guy on us, and I was ready to shut it down because I was a little tired already, and I said, they're on us, and Peter goes, no, there's just one guy. So I said, okay, that's fine. So I hop back on. Peter puts in a good effort here, and this bridging rider, he was kind of dangling. I don't know if we were going a little bit easier here, hoping that he would hop on and be willing to contribute, but he must have burned a pretty big match in order to get to us, because he doesn't really jump into the draft. And this would be the section to do it, because we're about to hit that headwind, remember, and if there's a gap, that's going to kill you. So he finally is getting within a stone's throw of us, but he really needs to be on my wheel. And I looked back to kind of see where he was, and you see I get off of Peter's wheel, and that sucked, because then I opened up a gap on myself, had taken all this headwind, and so none of the three this is not what a breakaway should look like at this particular stretch of road. So I claw my way back up to Peter, and as does the bridging rider, claws his way back up to me. And now that we're all together, I think I'm saying, okay, this is the 3-man break that's going to make it today. So Peter does his pull. Remember, I just had to bridge to catch back up to him, so I take a few second breather here. As soon as he flicks me through, he already did more than his fair share, so I definitely don't make him wait on that. And you can see he says it's looking good. Got a good gap. Got 3 of us. I try to let this young man that just bridged to us know, keep your pull short, because I could tell he was suffering since he was dangling there for a while. So I want to keep these pulls short. I figure I'd pull through as soon as we get through the next turn. He pulled through a little bit harder than I would have liked. I'm doing 400 watts around that corner here, and I don't think I saw his elbow there the first time. I was looking back to see where Peter was, who's kind of off the back a little bit here. And, I'm trying to get Peter to pull through. And then I come behind him. Wasn't going to let him skip any pulls. I mean, he was doing his fair share, but I also didn't want to lose him as what looked like the strongest of the 3 riders. Passing a lapped rider here. 0.5 seconds of draft. You know, and I asked Peter to look back as he gets to the back of the pack and ask him, you know, how's the gap looking? Because I don't really want to be looking back and trying to figure that out. I'm worried that they're right on us. And so I think it's better for the guy in the back of the pack to kind of monitor that if they can and communicate it to the rest of the riders if necessary, if they're catching up, if they seem to be gaining us, if they're even within visible range. So Peter pulls through, and this other white jerseyed gentleman lets a gap open, and I got a choice to make here. I'm not liking this gap that I'm seeing here. He's already kind of having trouble jumping onto us. I try to marshal him. He takes a weird line here, doesn't pedal very hard, and I've had enough. So I jump, and I say I think we were going faster, just the two of us, and I leave him in the dust. Hop back on Peter's wheel and pull on through. Let's make it happen. And that is the last you will see of that gentleman. If you're caught out without a wheel to draft off of in this section, and then after the next right turn, there's no way you're catching back on, especially with Calfzilla here pulling. So, mistake here on my part. I should be pulling through on the right hand side. I tell him we should take short pulls in this windiest of sections, and to be honest, that's more for my benefit than his. I'm trying to be. I want to win the bike race. We got a good gap here. I can't even see the field. I don't want to skip pulls, but he's definitely taking the stronger pulls, and if he'll take them in the headwind section, that's going to benefit me. Communicating, we want to take the best lines we can. We got this gap. It allows us to take exactly which line we want every single turn. And my short pulls comment, you can see it's benefiting me more than it's benefiting him. But as soon as he looks back, I'm already wondering, okay, is he going to flick me through here? And I know I was tempted to come around him several times to try and keep it more equal, but he was just so strong, and his draft was so effective that I would come out and it would just be like getting hit in the face with a freight train of wind in this section. And so, you see me I darted out and back in a couple of times there, and thought better of it and went back to hiding where I belonged. I remember there's a little bit of a climb here right before the right-hand turn, and so there were two kind of slow uphills on this particular stretch in addition to the headwind. So we take a good line. And he's slowing down a little bit. I was hoping he would get us up to the top of this, and I was going to pull through at the next roller. Could both recover on this downhill. Both of us descended pretty quickly. He was having none of that. He was accelerating into the downhill and then again up the next uphill. So you can see I'm still doing 300, 400 watts in his draft. So thank you, Peter, for driving this breakaway. I pull through, and you know, we're downhill here, so I'm going to recover for a few seconds, and then as soon as we get back to the flatter section, do a little bit more effective pull of the same watts that I was doing in his draft. And then he pulls back through. I mean, I was being conservative, and you know, now that we had a gap, starting to think of how I can beat this freight train of a man. And so, you know, I am trying to save a little bit. You know, it's hard for me to pull effectively when I have to go so hard to stay in his draft. He pulls so hard himself. So, you know, I wasn't going to let him drop me, so you can see he flicks me through. And some words of encouragement for him. Nice teamwork. So I go, and you know, he's doing great pulls, and this is above threshold for me. I think my FTP was like 315, 320 back when this was recorded. And so, you know, it's not for lack of trying. You know, I'm pulling at a decent pace here. I'm trying to make sure it's a measured pace, and trying to make sure it's a measured pace. I don't want to get dropped. I'll take a nice line through here. And I'm preparing for this next section, hoping that I don't have to be the one to pull as we turn back into the headwind. And you know, from here, I remember looking back, and there was nobody visible. You know, we had probably suggested to me at least a 45-second to 1 minute gap on the field. I didn't have anybody calling out time gaps to me, unfortunately, or if they did, I couldn't hear it. But as this was the first breakaway that I had ridden, generally I'm a sprinter. Some of the things that I should be listening for, looking for, thinking about, I was not necessarily thinking about. I was just trying to survive. So I, you know, take a good pull here, pull through after Peter does my least favorite section of the course. Some words of encouragement from Jeffrey Bowens, my team owner. So 1 lap to go, and I don't see anybody in my rearview mirror yet, but you know, in the final lap, I have a feeling that they're going to be getting desperate and trying to chase us back. So I just start looking back over my shoulder a little bit more often and try to, you know, keep us moving, but also save something in the tank, because at this point, you know, my brake mate has done more work than me. I feel like I'm in a pretty good position to be able to take the sprint if we stay away. And so, I'm gonna contribute, but the race is kind of mine to lose at this point. So I let them know, this race isn't not in the bag yet. Trying to mush him into continuing to do a little bit more of the work. And especially in sections where the wind is heavy. As we're approaching this turn, making sure we take a nice apex. Keep our speed up. Over 20 miles an hour through there, and I pull through. Nice measured effort, making sure to take good lines. Getting my much stronger brake mate in front of me to break as much wind as possible. I probably should have been even slightly more to the left here, especially to allow us to take a faster line around the corner. I think I looked back there and almost ran into my brake mate. It would be embarrassing to crash out of a brake that's been away for multiple laps. Two-man brake. Again, need to be hiding a little bit more to his right-hand side here, and pulling through on the right would have been the better side to do it. If this breakaway were to happen this year versus last year, I might have, especially if I saw the gap coming down, might have told him, hey, if you maybe pull just the slightest bit easier, I can pull just the slightest bit harder afterwards, because I won't be dying in your draft every time. But we might not have stayed away in that case. But, it's... I know that I wasn't intentionally trying to do a lot less work than him. I was putting in what I felt like were pretty decent efforts on a good number of my polls, but it's supposed to be recovering in the draft. If you can't do that, I don't want to drop myself. So, I pedaled kind of hard going up that hill, and it looked like he was struggling a little bit. I gave him a mush of encouragement, and he jumped right back on. And then he goes by at 1,000 watts. So I'm not sure if he was bluffing or what exactly happened there, but now it's hard because of the angle. My wheel's kind of right where you'd want to be able to see, but there's a speck off in the distance. I remember looking back, and I could at least see that there was something moving back in there, but they weren't close enough. I thought, you know, we're more than halfway through this lap. I thought we pretty much have to crash to get caught. I was perhaps underestimating just how quickly a chase effort could bring down a gap. But because I was seeing something back there, I wasn't gonna start playing too many games. And remember, this is the final lap, so coming into our last effort over the hill. And, you know, all I'm thinking is just stay on the wheel. And as he eases up before we even crest the hill, I had a feeling he was finally tiring. You can see that I kind of came forward on him. I took one pedal stroke longer than he did and almost hit his wheel, so he flicks me through. I want him to pull through the headwind section again here in a minute. And I hear him tell me to actually come on, come on, come on. He wants me to put in a little bit of effort, and you know, I think this is where he saw that the chase effort was actually making some gains on us. So I pull without really looking back to see whether or not I'm dropping him, and you can see he falls off my wheel a little bit. I don't think he was expecting me to go above 400 watts on my pull compared to what, you know, I've been pulling in the mid 300s for a lot of the rest of the time. But you know, he starts making up the gap. I look back and I do see that, you know, now we only have about 15 seconds or less. So I try and mush him along. Come on, Peter. They're coming. Get him in front of me right at the opportune moment, right before the last little bit of headwind. And now I just would like to not pull through at all, if at all possible. And I'm gonna, you know, if he flicks me through, I'm planning on attacking, as long as it happens after the headwind section. And if he doesn't ask me to pull through, then I'm gonna enjoy this ride to the finish line. I don't think that we're going to be getting caught, even if we both kind of phoned it in here. But if you look closely, they're coming in the rear. And that person there is Jake Westall from Impact, and he's actually pretty high up in the points. So I heard afterwards that Impact put in an effort, trained to do that. So, you know, here I see I kind of take the slightly outside line and dive inside, and just as soon as he looks back, I put in a nice seated power effort. A couple hard pedal strokes, saw he wasn't going to even contest it, and I just roll away for the win. The only time I've ever posted up for a ride was there, and I don't, even though there's photographers there, I don't have any photographic evidence of it. But that was the race. It was a good time. First non-criterium win for me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it again here in a few days. So until the next one, guys, thanks for listening.